It was called the surgery of the soul, a 10-minute procedure that promised to cure the incurable. But as the ice pick slid behind the eyelid, breaking through to the frontal lobe, it didn't just sever nerve fibers. It severed the very essence of what it means to be human. Today, we look back at the lobotomy as a medieval horror, a stain on modern medicine. Before we descend into this dark history, subscribe and comment below with the next story you want to hear. Now let us step into the ward. By the 1930s, mental hospitals were not places of healing, they were warehouses. Facilities designed for 500 patients held 5,000. Doctors were powerless, resorting to heroic treatments like insulin shock or ice water baths. In this atmosphere of desperation, the medical community wasn't looking for a slow cure. They were looking for a shortcut. That shortcut was the lobotomy. The story begins not in America, but in Portugal, with Dr. Egas Moniz. In 1935, after hearing that aggressive chimpanzees became mellow after their frontal lobes were damaged, Moniz made a radical leap. Why not try it on humans? He called it the leucotomy, but the procedure found its true champion in the United States, Dr. Walter Freeman. Freeman was a man of immense ego and theatrical flair. He didn't just want to treat patients. He wanted to be the man who saved humanity from insanity. Alongside his partner, the surgeon James Watts, Freeman refined the technique. They weren't just cutting tissue, they were rebranding a tragedy into a miracle. Freeman eventually grew impatient. He developed the transorbital lobotomy. Using a tool modeled after a kitchen ice pick, he would tap it through the tear duct into the brain. He became a traveling showman, performing hundreds of surgeries in weeks, sometimes even lobotomizing 2 people at once to impress the press. He called it surgery of the soul, but to his partners, it was a slap in the face to medicine. The theatricality of the procedures began to alienate the very colleagues who had once supported his vision. Medicine had become a spectacle, and the cost was the quiet destruction of lives, one tap at a time. Walter Freeman wasn't content with just a few successes in D.C. He wanted a revolution. He climbed into his personal van, which the press mockingly dubbed the Lobotomobile, and began a gruesome tour of America's state hospitals. He wasn't just a doctor, he was a missionary of the mallet. In West Virginia alone, he performed 225 lobotomies in just 12 days. He worked with the assembly line efficiency that would make Henry Ford recoil. From state to state, hospital to hospital, the missionary work continued. No anesthesia, just electroshock to knock the patient out, then the ice pick. He didn't believe in germ crap or sterile rooms, he believed in volume. To Freeman, every person silenced was a bed freed up in an overcrowded system. By the time his tour was over, the map of America was a constellation of silence. 50,000 procedures, 50,000 voices stilled. As the 1940s dawned, the lobotomy became a tool of social conformity. The criteria for the surgery began to widen with terrifying speed. It wasn't just for the dangerously insane. Soon, it was recommended for moody housewives, rebellious teenagers, and those with homosexual tendencies. Statistics reveal a chilling bias. Nearly 60% of lobotomy patients were women. In a patriarchal society, the lobotomy became a way to make difficult women agreeable. If a woman was too loud, too depressed, or too independent, the ice pick offered a silent solution. This was the era when the pursuit of a medical miracle crossed the line into the enforcement of silence. Perhaps no story captures the cold cruelty of this era better than that of Rosemary Kennedy. The sister of a future president, Rosemary was described as vibrant, beautiful, but slow and prone to mood swings. Fearing her rebelliousness would tarnish the family's political ambitions, her father, Joseph Kennedy, scheduled her for a lobotomy in 1941. During the surgery, Rosemary was awake, asked to sing songs and tell stories. As the doctors scraped away at her brain, they waited for her to become incoherent. When she began to babble, they knew they had gone far enough. She left that table with the mental capacity of a 2-year-old, unable to walk or speak clearly. She was hidden away in an institution for the rest of her life, a living ghost of the Kennedy dynasty. Her silence became the secret cost of a family's rise to power, a shadow that would haunt the Kennedy name for decades. As the procedure became faster, the moral bar became lower. Perhaps the darkest chapter of this era is the story of Howard Dully. At just 12 years old, Howard was brought to Freeman by his stepmother. Her complaint? He was defiant and daydreamed. He wasn't mentally ill, he was a child. Freeman didn't hesitate. He hammered the pick into the boy's eye sockets, forever altering a life that had barely begun. Howard didn't even know what had happened to him until he was an adult, living with a haunting sense that something, his very soul, had been stolen. He was one of hundreds of children who fell victim to the ice pick, sacrificed at the altar of convenience for parents who simply wanted their children to be more quiet. By the mid-1950s, the tide turned. The invention of Thorazine offered a chemical lobotomy that didn't require a mallet. Freeman performed his last lobotomy in 1967. The patient died. He was finally banned, but 50,000 others had already been processed. The history of the lobotomy is a cautionary tale of what happens when we prioritize convenience over humanity. Rosemary Kennedy and the others are not just statistics. They are the echoes of a dark era that promised light but delivered a hollow silence. As we look back, we must remember that the greatest horror wasn't the tool itself, but the willingness to use it. May their stories serve as a reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the sanctity of the human soul.